Why do they call you that?
Maybe it's because I'm Irish.
I could see why some of the boys took him for snobby. He had a quiet way about him, a walk and a talk that just wasn't normal around here. He strolled like a man in a park without a care or a worry in the world. Like he had on an invisible coat that would shield him from this place. Yeah, I think it would be fair to say I liked Andy from the start.
Okay, that's one of my all-time favorite movies, and most of you are shaking your head, yeah. It's one of those movies that if you're channel surfing and it's on, you just have to stop and watch it, right? It was made in 1994, was up for Best Picture in 94. It lost Best Picture to, anybody know? Forrest Gump. I'm glad you laughed. I did too. I was crying, actually. I couldn't watch Forrest Gump for the longest time. Forrest Gump's a good movie, but it doesn't hold a candle to this. The storytelling is just amazing. So this is a story of a couple of prisoners. The main character is a guy by the name of Andy Dufresne. And Andy, in his life, is a banker who is accused of a double murder and convicted of a double murder, his wife and his wife's lover. And he's innocent, of course, as you find out through the course of the movie. He's completely innocent, but that doesn't change the fact that he has been sentenced to back-to-back life sentences. He will be there for the rest of his life, or so it looks, so it appears. And he's also sentenced to a place called Shawshank Prison, which is an absolutely hellish existence. The guards are brutal beyond words. The warden is corrupt. He uses his position to get his inmates to participate in slave labor so that he can get kickbacks from outsiders and pad his bank account. Regularly, there are beatings and murders within the walls of Shawshank. And Andy knows this from the very first night he's there. There's a scene shortly before this where they have this little game, the inmates who have been there for a long time, to see which of the new fish, the new inmates, will crack first. And of course, when one young man finally cracks and starts sobbing in the middle of the night, "I don't belong here, I don't belong here," the guards come in and beat him to death. This is the kind of place that breaks the hardiest of souls. And yet, from the get-go, Andy strolls through the prison yard as if he doesn't have a care in the world. As if he has this, as Red said, this invisible shield that protects him. And no matter what the circumstances, things are always looking hopeful for him. And I guess I want to start the sermon by just simply asking the question, what drives that? Let's sing. the sermon series that I've been working on here. It's a very short sermon series. I call it Living Large. And what we're doing is we've been exploring God's purpose for our everyday lives. And for this last sermon, I was drawn to one of those passages that everyone seems to go to when we start talking about God's purpose for us. The passage that was just read, Mary just read it here from Jeremiah chapter 29. And especially that centerpiece that says, I know the purpose I have for you, and it's a purpose for good and not for evil. And, of course, that's why I picked the passage. But then, as I told the Bible study group on Wednesday night, I started reading the rest of the chapter. And there were some surprises in there. I did not expect to find what I found. So, beginning of the chapter, Jeremiah is writing a letter to God's people. And they are not in Jerusalem like you might think they would be. They have, in fact, been defeated by a mortal enemy. The Babylonian Empire has come into their homes. They've lived there for centuries. They've established long-time homes, their families. They've built a wall around the city. They have this big, beautiful temple that Solomon built a few hundred years earlier, and it is the centerpiece of a grand and glorious nation. And here comes the Babylonian army, and they tear down the walls of the city. They bust through the gates. They smash houses. They take Solomon's temple and turn it into a pile of rubble. The army is defeated, what little army that's left of the Israelite army. And the king is captured, and he's put in prison. The religious leaders are all captured. They're put in prison. The king's eyes are poked out. He's blinded. He has to spend the rest of his life blind and in prison, and he dies there in prison in Babylonia. And then nearly everyone else who lives in the city has been deported. They have been taken by guard and are forced to walk from Israel to Babylonia, which is modern-day Iraq, hundreds of miles, where they are scattered out throughout the Babylonian countryside to live in small groups. If you live in a small group, you can't create a problem for the people who are holding you prisoner. And that's who Jeremiah writes to. He was left behind. He and a few others. He was left behind because while he was a prophet, he wasn't a very popular prophet. In fact, they wanted to stone him. The Babylonians said, why waste time rounding this guy up? He's nobody. And so instead he writes these words, and they are not what you would expect. You would expect, for God talking about plans and purpose, that maybe included in that would be a message that the Babylonian Empire is going to fall very soon, that your fortunes are going to change, that these horrible circumstances in which you live, where you have lost your home, you've lost your life, you've lost your nation, you've lost your church, you've lost everything, where all of that's going to turn around and it's going to change, and it's going to change very soon. And if you notice what Mary read, it's nothing like that at all. Instead, here they are living in these cities around Babylonia, all around Babylonia, and Jeremiah says, build your house there. Get married. Have children. Marry off your sons and daughters. Let them have families. Raise your families there. Plant a garden. And here's the kicker of all kickers. Seek the welfare of the city in which you have been exiled, into which you've been exiled. These are mortal enemies. These are hated people because they came in and changed the life of God's people forever, and not in a good way. And Jeremiah is saying, live there. Live now. Seek the welfare of the people who have captured you. Isn't that interesting? Did any of you happen to see the national championship football game on Monday night? I was not going to watch it because there's only one team that I cared less about than Clemson, and that was Alabama. Although with the beatdown that Clemson gave them, I became a kind of a Clemson hero in a hurry. But then I started watching and listening a little bit towards the end of the game when they started talking about the head coach, Dabo Swinney, and sort of his life. He's built a football center at Clemson, and the motto for the football center is serve their hearts, not their talents. Wow. And then the interview, of course, he praises Jesus because he's a Christian, and he talks about the way he cares for not only his players, but everybody who's on his staff. And that caring comes first. It comes even before football. Football is just a reason to gather people together so that he can care about them. Well, I started doing a little digging on this guy, and I found all kinds of interesting stuff. He's not always been a national championship head coach of a major football team, college football team. He's been through trials. He's been through struggles of all kinds. He became a Christian when he was 16, and he had to start from the ground and work his way up, and that's exactly what he did. And his motto through all of that is this: bloom where you're planted. Kind of sounds like Jeremiah, doesn't it? I think we have this idea that the circumstances of our lives will dictate whether or not we can have peace in our lives. So if you're facing money problems and that's agitating your life, then if you get rid of the money problems, you will have peace. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I mean, you want to work towards getting away from money problems for sure. Or if you're in some kind of sickness, if you have health, then that health will bring you peace. Or if there's somebody at work or somebody at school who harasses you all the time and you can't get, not only can you not get along with them, but they're really sort of a thorn in your side and they won't leave you alone. And if you could just get rid of that person in your life or that problem in your life, you will have peace. The circumstances of your life, we believe, is what brings us peace and the change of those circumstances. But that's not what Dabo Jeremiah Swinney is saying. He's saying that the circumstances of your life have very little to do with the peace that's in your soul. That peace comes from someplace else, someplace greater and wider and deeper than any circumstance that this life will throw at you. Let me say that again. It's not the change of circumstances in your life that will bring you peace, because it's not the circumstances that make peace for you. I can promise you that if you get rid of one circumstance in your life, something else is going to pop up. That's just the nature of life. And it's going to be that next thing that you have to get rid of before you have peace. And then you get rid of that, something else is going to pop up. And that next thing is going to be that barrier towards peace, and on it goes. Dabo is absolutely correct. Jeremiah is spot on correct. Live now. Bloom where you're planted. Because, you see, peace doesn't come from the circumstances in which you live. Peace comes from an invisible shield, a deep well that is larger than anything this life will send your way. Let's sing. So I will tell you that as your pastor and as a pastor of since, 1985, however long I've been doing this, the number one question that I get from parishioners or from folks that see me on the street and they see my backwards collar, this one here, and they'll say, "Oh, you're a pastor." And then they'll get into conversation. They'll say, what's God's purpose in my life? What does he want from me? And it's a manifold answer, but it really starts here. This is the first and simple answer. It's very easy. God wants you to have a relationship with him. Okay? Let me say that again. God's purpose for you starts as you have a relationship with him. Because you see, he knows that without that, the circumstances of your life become everything in your life. And you need something wider, deeper, higher, taller than any circumstance that this life can throw at you. You need to be a part of something larger than yourself. And then once you are, the circumstances of your life, no matter how good those circumstances are, no matter how bad those circumstances are, become opportunities. They become tools in God's hands so that you are strengthened in your faith. God says, I know the purpose I have for you. And it is a purpose that is meant for good, not for evil. You hold on to that while all of the evil that comes your way and all the trials and troubles that come your way, all of those things are hitting you full force. And you hold on to that and know that there's something larger in store for you, something larger that is your center. And it's a game changer. It is an absolute game changer. And then other people, talk about being a tool in God's hand. Other people see your circumstances, see your trials, see your troubles, whatever it happens to be. And they see you walking around like Andy Dufresne, like you're on a stroll in the park. And they want to know more too. And all of a sudden, it's not just you getting through some stinky things in life. It's you getting through stinky things and becoming a beacon for others to see that impenetrable center, that life that changes everything. I'd like to show you one more clip from Shawshank Redemption. Watch. By the way, it's going to spoil for the ending. Too bad.
Dear Red, if you're reading this, you've gotten out. And if you've come this far, maybe you're willing to come a little further. You remember the name of the town, don't you?
Say what the nail.
I could use a good man to help me get my project on wheels. I'll keep an eye out for you, and the chessboard ready. Remember, Red, hope is a good thing. Maybe the best of things. And no good thing ever dies. hoping that this letter finds you, and finds you well. Your friend, Andy.
Get busy living or get busy dying. For the second time in my life, I'm guilty of committing a crime. A role violation. Of course, I doubt they'll toss up any roadblocks for that. Not for an old crook like me. Fort Hancock, Texas. I find I'm so excited I can barely sit still or hold a thought in my head. I think it's the excitement only a free man can feel. A free man at the start of a long journey whose conclusion is uncertain. I hope I can make it across the border. I hope to see my friend and shake his hand. I hope the Pacific is as blue as it has been in my dreams. I hope.
Well, let me close with a question. And by the way, it's no mistake you're here. So if you've come this far, if you made it through those doors, parked yourself in this pew, are you willing to come just a little further? Come to the table. Come to know that life-changing center that makes you new, changes your world, that makes all of those externals nothing more than tools in the hands of your Maker.